I figured out some secret combos that make Naoe and Yasuke even more deadly, and you can find secret shrines that grant unique temporary combat buffs. There are also special activities at certain viewpoints that will let you snag some really strong gear early on, like better than some legendary stuff. Plus, there's also an overpowered gear perk you're going to want to be on the lookout for Naoe. I'll show you all that stuff in a minute, but there are a bunch of things you're going to want to know to have the best start and get the most out of AC Shadows. Like, this sounds really basic, but it's so important that you unlock fast travel viewpoints whenever you're near one. In particular, you definitely want to make sure to get at least one in the Iga region at the very start of the game while playing as Naoe. Of course, I'm not going to spoil anything, but after a few hours, the main story transports you to a different part of the map. And the thing is, you're going to want to get back to Iga after a bit, and if you don't have a fast travel point there, you're going to have to do a lot of riding to make it back. I missed out on unlocking a viewpoint around Iga early on, and I definitely wish I had grabbed one. But honestly, it's true for basically all viewpoints. See, between settlements and other points of interest, the map is filled with forests and grasslands that are full of beautiful scenery, but there's just really nothing going on in these areas. So it can get a bit tedious just riding your horse for minutes at a time to get where you need to go. So unlocking as many viewpoints as possible for fast travel really improves your experience. Naoe is definitely the one to use for unlocking viewpoints, by the way, since she can just climb up the outside of buildings with her grappling hook. So if you're playing as Yasuke, I'd highly recommend opening the menu, going to your inventory, and holding the button right here to switch characters. You can do that pretty much anytime you want, by the way, after getting through the first few required story missions played as each character. You can also switch characters when you fast travel by using this prompt shown on the map. But some viewpoints actually also have a special Path of the Blade activity nearby that you definitely want to keep an eye out for. Not only do these give a knowledge point, which we'll talk about in a second, but they also give you a piece of really good purple rarity gear for Naoe. And I was actually surprised to find out later that some of this gear has even better stats or more desirable perks than some of the legendary stuff I was finding. So you might want to go find some of these Path of the Blade activities early. One of them is over here starting at the Koyana Ruins viewpoint in the Senri Hills, and another is over here in the Suzuka Foothills. I'll let you find the rest on your own. Or I'm sure they'll be added to the Map Genie interactive map link I put in all my video descriptions. There are some other really important things you should know about gear too, like the best afflictions to look out for and how to use the engraving system, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to make sure you know some important gameplay and progression tips. Like, very early on, the game is going to let you know about the various orange icons for different activities, and these are way more important than you might think. See, any orange icon activity will reward you with a knowledge point. Knowledge points go towards unlocking knowledge ranks, which are part of the skill system. So here's how this works. Naoe and Yasuke each have multiple skill trees, or mastery trees, which contain a bunch of passive and active abilities. You unlock those abilities by spending mastery points. This big number in the upper right here is your mastery points. You get those from leveling up, killing targets during missions, and killing samurai Daisho, which are basically strong mini-bosses found in castles. So doing those things will get you mastery points, but you can't just spend them on whatever abilities you want. That's because there are 6 knowledge levels, and you need to rank up your knowledge level before you can go for the abilities at each level. To rank up knowledge, you need knowledge points, which come from those orange activities. You can see why completing those is really important. If you ignore them, you're going to soft cap yourself on which abilities you can access, and some of the best ones start becoming available at knowledge rank 3 or higher. So you don't need to think much about getting mastery points, you'll just naturally get those as you play. But knowledge points from those orange activities should be prioritized. The other important thing to understand about the skill system is that your mastery points and knowledge rank are duplicated for Naoe and Yasuke. What I mean is, if you get a mastery point as Naoe, you'll also get one for Yasuke, and vice versa. So while you're playing as Naoe for a while at the beginning of the game, any mastery and knowledge points you acquire with her rack up for Yasuke in the background. That means when you first play his story section, the very first thing you should do is open his mastery trees and unlock abilities using the points you've racked up while playing as Naoe. And that holds true throughout the game. Anytime you switch characters after using using one for a while, make sure to check your masteries to see if you want to spend some points. Oh, and masteries can be reset and the points reassigned anytime you want. Just go to the tree you want to reset and hit this button right here. But those orange knowledge point activities aren't the only thing you want to keep an eye out for while exploring. There are actually these little shrines you can pray at that give you a temporary random combat buff. It lasts for at least 15 minutes and can be boosted much further, both in terms of the time it lasts and its effectiveness with things like the Jinja building in the Hideout. More on the Hideout in a minute because it's actually really important, but these combat buff shrines out in the world don't actually show up on the map. You sort of just come across them. So when you do, it's always worth stopping to grab a quick buff. I've seen at least 8 different buffs, including increased melee damage, increased piercing against armor, increased critical hit chance and critical hit strength, a max health boost, faster adrenaline gain, and increased affliction buildup. The buff you get is random, but the shrines never run out, so you can pray over and over again as many times as you want to try to get the buff you like. Oh, and don't confuse these combat buff shrines with the small statues where you can make an offering for a bit of extra XP. Again, I'm sure over time that the map genie link in the description will get populated with the locations of these hidden shrines. But if you want to make sure you can grab a buff before heading out on a tough mission, fortunately, there is one right at your hideout just a little ways off to the side of the stables. You can pray there anytime before heading back out. But realistically, you're probably not going to go get a shrine buff all the time. So let me give you the best combat tips I've discovered that you can use anytime. First off, while playing as Naoe, you're definitely going to want to get the Kusarigama weapon as soon as possible. This thing is really good for crowd control. Naoe can't take much of a hit, especially at the start. And yes, you're probably going to play stealthy most of the time with her, but you're also going to get into some fights, and she is totally capable of holding her own in direct combat if you practice enough. But the Kusarigama just makes multi-enemy encounters so much easier. You can either buy one at a merchant or go unlock the legendary Death Whisperer early by doing the Wada Korataki mission. You'll want to use the R2 heavy attack a lot to swing the ball and chain around and hit multiple enemies at once. It'll often stagger them, interrupting their attacks, and also break down their armor. For single enemies, the katana is generally more effective, but I always switch to the Kusarigama anytime I'm taking on multiple enemies with Naoe. Once you have a secondary weapon equipped, just tap right on the D-pad to switch anytime. Oh, and if you want to sheath any weapon, you can just hold down right on the D-pad for a couple of seconds. The other thing you're probably going to want to do early with Naoe is the Stray Dogs mission to get Yaya as a companion. To call in a companion, you just need to hold R2 and then hit the prompt for the one you want, and they'll come help you. Yaya is much bigger than Naoe, and she'll pummel a bunch of enemies for you, often knocking them down, where you'll want to remember to finish them off with a ground attack for easy kills and adrenaline gain. I'm sure you're also going to be using Naoe's kunai a lot to nail enemies at range from stealth. The base maximum of 3 is pretty limiting, but there is a way to easily get them back. Of course, just like the boxes that will give you more rations, you should keep an eye out for boxes that will replenish all your tools while out on a mission. Or you can get stocked back up at the Kakurega building in your hideout, or the ones you discover and unlock in settlements. But the easiest way to stay stocked up on kunai is to simply go over to the body after killing an enemy and stand over it. Naoe will automatically pick her kunai back up. Just keep in mind, if you use more than one to kill an enemy, you're only going to get one back when you do this. And that works for Yasuke's arrows too. Just head over to the enemy after you nail them and Yasuke will get the arrow back. Similar to the Kusarigama for Naoe, I highly recommend buying a bow for Yasuke as soon as possible too. He's definitely not meant to be played stealthy like Naoe, but being able to pick a few enemies off before rushing in to take out the rest is a big help. The rifle is fun too, but it's slow to reload and obviously loud, so not great for a stealthy open. Personally, I find the bow much more useful. Another tip for Yasuke is to use the R1 hold posture attack to maximize damage after making enemies vulnerable. As the game teaches you, you can get enemies into a vulnerable state, which is when they glow yellowy orange, by either parrying a single white glint attack, pairing a full series of blue glint attacks, dodging away from a red attack at the last moment, or destroying their armor. But the game sort of implies that holding R1 or R2 to charge up a posture attack gives the same result, which it doesn't. At least for Yasuke, holding R1 will deal more total damage to a vulnerable enemy than holding R2, and it's also more than doing a full 4-hit light attack combo or a 3-hit heavy combo. So the R1 hold is what you should always default to with Yasuke after getting an enemy vulnerable. It seems to be true with Naoe too, although I need to test more to make sure since she deals smaller amounts of damage with her weapons. We'll probably dive into that more in a future video, but there are some secret combos you should be aware of too. So let's blast through some key tips for general gameplay I want to make sure you've got, and then I'll show you those. The Hideout can give you some great utility and passive boosts if you know what to build and upgrade. Like building a Terra will give you a 10% boost to all XP gained, which is pretty powerful if you get it early. But the challenge is getting enough resources to build stuff like this. When you first unlock the Hideout, the game will have you build a Kakurega, which gives you an additional scout and unlocks contracts. Contracts are one of, if not the most efficient ways to get resources fast, and they refresh each season, so check back often at the Kakurega to see what's available. It's definitely worth doing at least the one that gives the most resources, if not all of them. The other good way to get resources is by deploying scouts to steal from stockpiles. You'll find stockpiles in various guarded areas, which you can find by looking for the little red icons on the map. Hover over them and try to find one that has high wealth. To actually deploy a scout, you need to physically go to the location, sneak in and find the stockpile, and then interact with it to mark it for a scout to come get. At the end of a season, you'll find the resources the scout gathered in the salvage chest, which is in the stables at your hideout. Although I swear that chest has had some resources in it a few times when I haven't had any scouts deployed, so maybe check it each time you go back to the hideout. But of course, you don't want to commit all your scouts to stealing resources. You'll want some to help narrow down search areas for targets during missions. I try to remember to deploy scouts about halfway or 3/4 of the way through a season so they aren't tied up for long. The seasons are tracked on this compass gauge on the map. Every quarter of this gauge is one season, so keep an eye on it. Oh, and you'll need Mon too, so go to a merchant every once in a while and use the sell all valuables option to cash out the random items you've looted. They can't be used for anything else, so this is totally safe. But back in the hideout, as soon as possible, you also want to build a study and upgrade the stables. The study gives you another scout and makes them give you a smaller, more accurate search area when deploying them to help locate a target. Upgrading the stables reduces the cost of deploying scouts to steal from stockpiles from 2 per pile to just 1, which is big. Next, I'd prioritize getting that Terra building since it'll boost your XP gain through the entire game. After that, you should probably build a forge, which will require completing a quest for Tomiko to find a blacksmith. The forge will let you upgrade gear, and upgrades do make a pretty significant difference. So once you get some decent gear, like those purple items we mentioned earlier, you'll want to see how much extra oomph you can get out of them by upgrading. And there's also engravings to consider too. So here's how all the gear stuff works. Each piece of gear has a colored rarity and a numbered level. The rarity can't change, but the level can increase through upgrades. White or colorless is the most basic rarity, and those items just have stats. When you step up to green, you'll get 1 preset perk. Blue gear will have 1 preset perk and an open slot for an engraving. Engravings are just a perk of your choice. Purple gear is the same as blue, but generally with much better stats, to the point that purple gear can actually be better than some gold gear. But gold gear is special because each piece has a unique, powerful preset perk. So higher rarity gear is better because it usually has higher max stats, but especially because the higher rarities have better perks and give you an engraving slot. You engrave by going to this tab in the forge, and you can see all the engravings available and where to get the ones you want by scrolling through the list. You won't be able to use engravings until you upgrade the forge to level 2 though, which you'll want to prioritize once you've got Naoe and Yasuke approaching level 20 or so. But early on, sometimes you'll find low rarity gear with a higher level than some of your higher rarity stuff, like maybe a white piece of gear that's better than green or blue. Don't worry about that too much. Just use whatever gives you the best stats until you can get a forge and start upgrading. The max level you can upgrade gear to and use is capped at your current level. So you'll need to get to about level 15 before using the forge to upgrade gear even makes sense. That's also why you'll find some gear you can't use with the level marked red. It's because the gear's level is higher than yours. Once you level up a bit, you'll be able to use it. You'll want to keep an eye on the region levels on the map too, by the way. Red region levels mean you're going to encounter enemies there that are much higher level than you. Like, if you see enemies with a skull icon, that means they're more than a few levels higher than you, and they'll kill you in one shot. Your damage will also be massively nerfed against them, no matter how good your gear is. It can feel very discouraging, but the tables turn very fast as soon as you get your level closer to theirs. So just steer clear of regions with a red level mark. Once you level up, they'll change to black to let you know you're ready to go there. But back to upgrading gear. Eventually, you can deconstruct extra gear you don't need to get resources, but I wouldn't do that until much later. There's a storage chest in your Kakuregas where you can dump extra gear if you want to clear up your inventory. At first, I would generally stick to upgrading blue or higher rarity gear and only weapons and armor pieces. The trinkets aren't really worth upgrading until later on. And remember, if you don't like how a piece of gear looks, you can either hide it with this button right here, or once you're a little further along in the story, you'll be able to customize it to look like another piece of gear with this button right here. You'll also want to pay attention to weapons to see if they have an affliction stat. You can have poison, daze, or bleed, and for each of them, you need to hit the enemy enough times to build up the circular gauge before the affliction actually applies. If you take a break from hitting them, the gauge will quickly degrade, so you have to keep the pressure on to build up afflictions. Once you trigger it, the poison affliction will cause damage over time. Daze will cause enemies to be a bit confused and not accurate with their attacks, but in my opinion, bleed is the best. Once you build it up, you basically get a big chunk of extra damage. But for Naoe, there's also a really strong perk to look out for. Remember how Yaya can knock down enemies and then Naoe could follow up with a ground strike to finish them off in one shot? Well, there are certain pieces of gear that will give Naoe a way to knock down enemies on her own, making it super easy to kill them. It's more of a late game build thing, but it's really strong, so keep an eye out for any gear with a perk that gives Naoe ways to knock down enemies. Before that though, you can do some solid damage with those secret combos I mentioned. So the first one is 2 R1 light attacks followed by 1 R2 heavy. That'll get you to the final, more powerful hit of the normal 3-move R2 combo faster. You should also know that you can hold R1 or R2 to start a posture attack at any point in the normal R1 or R2 combos. The best way I've found to use this is by holding the final move. So for the 4-hit light attack combo, hold down R1 on the 4th move and then release for a more powerful blow. With the heavy, it's a 3-move combo, so you want to hold R2 on the 3rd move. The last moves of the normal combos already do more damage to begin with, and holding them boosts it a bit more. I'll have lots more combat tips in future videos, and I'll put the next one right here when it's ready. Until then, you're welcome to come hang out on my Discord server, which is always linked in the description. We've got a great community and some big Assassin's Creed fans over there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in that next video in just a second.